why doesn't everybody do a cystoscopy? So why does what do you need to do a cystoscopy?
Cystoscope. But not many people have the cystoscope. Why don't they have it? It is expensive. So for a non-urologist, people who are not doing urology work, investing in cystoscope is a huge investment, of which you won't get much returns. So that is the reason why people don't have a cystoscope. If you don't have a cystoscope, obviously you can't do cystoscopies. Okay, so these are the various parts of a conventional cystoscope. It's written, it starts with T. It is a telescope. This is one of the things which makes a cystoscope expensive. Why? Because it contains various rod lenses which are arranged, and it costs, I don't know about it, in Indian rupees is about, or maybe 3.5 lakhs is how many? 3.5, 4 lakhs is how many dollars? $5,000. Yeah, $4,000 to $5,000 it will cost for the thing. And this is called the sheath. Okay. And what would you call this, which connects the telescope and the sheath? Bridge. Very smart. Okay, so these two components are not all that expensive because it's just made of metal. But the telescope is expensive. But in addition, if you have just the cystoscope, olden days what we used to do is we used to look through the eyepiece. And then you'll have to bend and have a severe back pain and all those things to do the cystoscopies. And again, the people who are assisting, they cannot really see what you're doing. So they won't know what you're trying, what you are seeing, and if you can't see, it's difficult to assist. Say somebody, if you're helping with the operation, you blindfold them and say you retract here and do this way, that way, they can't intelligently assist. So generally what people have is they attach a camera there which connects to a monitor, and then also you need a light source. So that because you need to pass the light from the light source into the bladder, then the rod lenses transmit the pictures back to the camera. So all this makes it very, very expensive. So each component is about $2,000 to $3,000. So $10,000 to $12,000 for a various cystoscope. It's an expensive affair, and that is the reason why people are not able to afford a cystoscope. So what are the indications for cystoscope? So what is hematuria? Blood in the urine. So what are the types of hematuria? Okay. So what is macroscopic or what is microscopic? So macroscopic hematuria, there is no doubt. Patient will come and say, okay, I have blood in the urine. And microscopic hematuria, when you say he can't see, you need a microscope to see. So if you do a blood test or something and then you find a lot of RBCs, it's called microscopic hematuria. Where all can the blood come? Ultimately to come to the urine. So it can come anywhere from the kidney, it can come from the ureter, it can come from the bladder. So unless you actually do a cystoscopy, you won't know what is the cause of the bleeding. It can be serious like a malignancy, or it can be infection, or it can be stones which are not so bad. Because once you treat, they'll be alright. So how do you know from, say if the bleeding is from the kidney or ureter, how will you know whether this is cystoscope?
Blood passing to the ureter as well.
So what you do is you empty the bladder and look at the urinary orifices. So if it is from the kidney or from the ureter, it comes from the urinary orifice. So you know it is coming from there. But if it is from the bladder, you know what are the causes in the bladder. You see what the lesion is. Okay. Then, okay, now we go to the evaluation of lower urinary tract symptoms. So this is usually we talk of these are symptoms in men who are older. So what are the two types of lower urinary tract symptoms? So this people can look at the obstructive is there. I'm not going to give you a great reward for it because it's already written. So what is the other group? So one is obstructive and what is the other group?
Non-obstructive.
I won't accept that. So what are the obstructive symptoms? So first is called? So what is hesitancy? So you hesitate to go to the toilet or then?
Because to initiate.
So especially as you grow older, it takes a little, once you go to the toilet, you immediately pass urine? No. It takes a little while. Okay, so why does that happen? So when you go to the toilet, it doesn't come out. So what is the mechanism?
I think you're trying to overcome the pressure that is obstructing.
Okay, so there is a sphincter. See, normally there is something like a valve or a sphincter, what we call it, which offers pressure to prevent the urine from leaking. If it is not there, you'll have continuous leak of urine. Okay, so how much is the pressure? We got that you need to overcome a pressure to pass urine. So do you pass urine? So how much pressure do you overcome each time? Centimeters of water. So how many?
60.
60. How old are you? Okay, usually in men.
No, it's about 40 centimeters of water.
Okay, both are right in the sense that in women it's 40 and men it's 60. Okay. So who can pass if we have a competition for passing urine? Women can easily do it. Because they need to overcome only 40 centimeters of water. While men normally take about 60. Okay, so that is why even ordinarily if you go to the toilet, how is the pressure generated? What generates the pressure? Is there any pump? The muscles of the bladder contract. So as they contract, the pressure increases. So when it reaches about 60 centimeters, then the sphincter opens and you pass it in men, and 40 centimeters in women. Okay, what happens if the pressure goes to 70? So which will take longer time to overcome 70 or overcome 60 centimeters? Wow, you're very smart. So we found that. So if it goes to 80, it even takes longer. So that is the reason for having this hesitancy. So people will also, as they keep growing older, they keep observing. So why is that obstruction in older people, older men?
Because most of the time it is benign prostatic hypertrophy.
Okay, so there is a structure called prostate which is near the sphincter. Okay, and normally it's about 40 grams weight or whatever it is you call at the age of about 40. Then it starts growing as people grow older. Okay, each year it grows about 1 gram. So when you're 50, it may be 50 grams. When you're 60, it gets 60 grams. But then it doesn't actually correlate with the obstruction. But generally, that is the reason for hesitancy. Then what about poor stream? What is the next symptom? Poor stream. So why does that happen? See, in the children, I don't know whether in Uganda they play. In India they play. While passing urine, they can write the name on this thing. But can you do that when you reach 60, 70? No. So why does it happen? The stream becomes poor. Why? Again, the same reason. So as the pressure keeps going, there is more and more obstruction. So if there is a narrow tube and it takes more pressure, more energy to push the urine across the sphincter. So the first symptom which happens is hesitancy. Then it becomes poor stream. And poor stream, again, people will, it's a relative thing. So they will, earlier they were passing with quite good force, now they can't do that. Okay. And what is the third one? So what do you understand by intermittency? Okay. It may not be totally interrupted, or the force also can vary. Why does that happen? Do you have a lot of railway stations here? Train stations? No. Okay. Okay, or imagine you are carrying a huge suitcase. You are walking for 1 kilometer. So if it is a light suitcase, what will happen? You keep comfortably walk without any problem and continuously. But if it is a heavy suitcase, what do you do? So you take from this hand, then you change to the other hand, or keep it down, and then do that. So that is what happens with when the obstruction becomes relatively more. So when you have 60 centimeters of water pressure, nothing much. You can have a good stream, you don't have any problem. Then when it goes to 70, you will start hesitancy, then you will start having poor stream. Then later on, when the magnitude increases, it goes to intermittency. Okay. So the force may not, as you said, may not be totally interrupted. Don't stop and start, stop and start. But the force will keep varying. And then what is the last one? Intermittence, incomplete voiding. So what happens? So the same analogy of carrying a heavy suitcase. If it's very, very heavy, then what happens? You give up. You say, enough, I can't reach the destination. So then it leads to incomplete voiding. And what is the problem with incomplete voiding?
Infections.
Huh?
Infections.
Why infection? Huh? Is the urine in the bladder sterile? No? Sure? Okay, so what is the problem if it is incomplete voiding? Okay, it doesn't matter. So why don't we see if it has bacteria, why don't you have infection? Who said it is not sterile? So why don't you have urinary tract infection if you don't have a urine with infected with bacteria?
I think the urine is supposed to be sterile, but sometimes the hematogenous infections can reach there. But because it is avoided, you avoided it.
Now you're going back to the question. So you're questioning whether it's sterile or not. So however, we'll have a voting. Okay. How many say urine is absolutely sterile? Raise your hands. Okay. How much will you give me if I prove that it's not sterile? Okay, there is always some bacteria in the bladder. So it is not sterile. So that, in fact, urologists even in the sterility theatre, they say it's a semi-sterile procedure because urine is not completely sterile. But why don't you have infection? Because most of us when you pass urine, you completely empty the bladder. Okay. Why is it important? Because bacteria, they have a multiplication time of about 20 minutes. So if you start with 10 bacteria, 20 minutes later, how much will it be? 20. And then another 20 minutes later, it will be 40. Another 20 minutes will be 80. But then only when you have more than 100,000 bacteria per ml, it causes significant infection. So that is where this question of incomplete voiding is there. So what happens if there is incomplete voiding? What happens?
The bacteria has more time to multiply.
No, you pass. In fact, people with incomplete voiding will pass urine more frequently. See, when you produce about 100 ml per hour.
Yes.
So how often do you pass urine? Once in 10 days. Huh? So how often do you pass? Okay, 3 to 4 hours. Okay, so now capacity is about say 350 to 400 ml. So when you reach 400 ml, you pass urine. But so normal, if you totally empty, if you are producing urine at 100 ml per hour, after 4 hours you will pass urine. But if you are able to empty only 300 ml, then when will you pass urine? After how many hours will you pass urine if you are producing 100 ml per hour?
Then the next time to reduced will pass.
When?
Then the next time I'm passing urine, the duration will be reduced.
Yeah, how much? You have to calculate. You should not say I don't like max. You should know max. So normally I said you produce urine at 100 ml per hour and capacity is 400. So when you reach the capacity, you pass urine. So normal person will pass urine after 4 hours. So after passing urine, if somebody with a post-void residue has 100 ml after passing urine, how much longer will it take? I mean, when it is,
3 hours.
Yeah, 3 hours it will pass. Okay, so then in fact, people will keep passing urine more frequently if they have residue. But that does not lead to infection. So what leads to infection? So now you have to think of both the things.
I'm thinking this residual urine will create culture for the bacteria. It will be like a culture media and will promote growth.
You need not have a culture media, even otherwise what happens? Each time you start with the higher level. Say if you have, say you start with 1000 bacteria, we end up with 30,000 or 40,000 bacteria after 4 hours. If you pass completely, all the bacteria are gone. Then you start with a little bit. But if you are able to pass only 300 ml and leave behind 100 ml, you start with a higher load of bacteria each time. So then after 3 hours, it will be much higher. So once you pass what the leftover urine will have, even higher content of bacteria. So then you eventually reach a stage where it will be more than 100,000 bacteria per ml and you have an infection. Okay, so these are all, what happened to the slides? Okay, these are all called obstructive symptoms. Now you don't even have your next slide to help you. So what are the other symptoms?
I beg your pardon on the reason as to why. I beg your pardon to repeat for me what you had discussed previously on why they have increased bacteria.
See, each time the urine, the bacteria in the urine keeps doubling. Okay, after you pass urine, only less than 30 ml is left behind normally. So most of the urine, the bacteria which multiplied is passed away. So you have a little bit of urine which is 30 ml or 20 ml with a little bit of bacteria. But then when you have 100 ml left over, the amount of bacteria in that 100 ml is more each time. So if there are 100 bacteria the first time, after 4 hours there will be 200 bacteria because these 100 would have multiplied much more. Then after next cycle of voiding, you'll start with instead of 200, you'll start with 500. So each time when there is residual urine, the number of bacteria is higher and higher. So that is the problem. Okay, then what is the next one? Now no power supply, so no slides. So what is the next group of symptoms? Or you tell me what symptoms you have. What are the other urinary tract symptoms you know? Dysuria, okay then. What is dysuria? Okay, burning, pain, whatever will pass in urine then.
And there may also be increased frequency.
Okay, increased frequency. Okay, so that is one another symptom. Nocturia. Okay, then you can have. First, earlier we were discussing about something in the blood, urine. Hematuria. Okay. Then you can have pus in the urine, pyuria. These are all various symptoms. So what are these other three? Increased frequency, nocturia. Then what is one symptom which you have not yet told me yet? Incontinence. Okay, then. Related to incontinence? Urgency. Okay. So what is urgency? What is increased frequency? What is nocturia? If you want to call it some name, what name would you give? These are called irritative voiding symptoms. So basic two groups are there. One is obstructive, one is irritative. So how does irritative voiding symptoms differ? See, increased frequency can be due to obstruction also. If you are incomplete voiding, the frequency as it will increase. Okay. Even without significant residue, you can have still have irritative voiding symptoms. So what happens with the irritative voiding symptoms? Why do you get irritative voiding symptoms?
Because of restriction.
You don't have to actually look at urinary tract at all. Even otherwise, say, if you have diabetes, what happens? Do you pass urine once in a while or you pass frequently? Okay, so increased frequency will be there in diabetes. What about nocturia? Will they be there in diabetes? Yeah. So diabetes is one cause of irritative voiding symptoms. Okay, then somebody said inflammation. So what causes inflammation? If there is infection, inflammation, stones, whatever irritates the bladder. So that will again cause irritative voiding symptoms. Basically, these are increased frequency and urgency. And what happens with the detrusor or pressure inside the bladder? Is it like a balloon or is it different? Say, if you blow a balloon, so as the size of the balloon increases, the pressure inside increases. Does the same thing happen with bladder or no? Obviously, because I'm asking the question, you should tell the answer is no. If it is the same as balloon, I won't ask the question. So now tell me, why does it happen?
Because in the blood we have transition area, which allows flexibility.
Okay, it is elasticity, but not the epithelium. Epithelium is just a sheet of cells. What happens? Why is it no?
I think it's yes, the pressure increases with, it's like a balloon, pressure increases with the amount of urine in the blood.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen with the urinary bladder. See, balloon, if you blow, obviously it increases.
I think,
See, normally I'll tell you, see, we do a test called cystometrogram or bladder pressure studies. So if you do that, the pressure may start with 3 or 4 centimeters of water. Till it reaches about 100 or 150 ml, it will go to 8 or 10 centimeters of water. Then till it reaches about 350 or 400 ml, it will remain till about 15 or 16 or 18. And then once you are passing urine, it will go up to 60. So from say 150 ml to 400 ml, it almost stays exactly the same. Because otherwise what will happen is, say if you are passing, if the pressure keeps increasing, you will have the desire to pass urine. So does it happen? So till you Say for the last time since you pass urine, till 3 hours, do you keep on increasing the urgency and then go? No. You don't feel like when you want to pass urine at all, till the bladder is almost full. So why does that happen?
The bladder has special receptors which are able to detect it.
There's no computer, there's no sensors in the bladder. Okay, it's basically the way the detrusor muscles are arranged. So God has arranged this in such a way that when the bladder expands, there is no increase in pressure. And you have the desire to pass urine when there is actually increase in pressure. And then, but if you have a desire to pass urine, do you immediately pass urine? Oh no.
First, take some time.
No, say now your bladder, imagine your bladder has 400 ml of urine and you have the desire to pass urine. Do you pass urine immediately or no?
You don't pass it.
Then?
You don't.
Why? Then what do you do? So, I mean, you have to pass urine because you have to empty the bladder. So, why don't you pass immediately?
You voluntarily control the bladder.
Huh?
You voluntarily control the
Yeah, but why do you want to control the bladder? So, how many people have a full bladder? Okay.
For social convenience.
So you need to find the first, you don't want to pass in the middle of the class. So you need to find a toilet. You need to go there and find it empty. You have to go inside, close the door. Then you have to undress. Then only you can pass. So all those are controlled by your brain. Okay, but the bladder will tell you, okay, and it does, that control is not there with children. So children, when the bladder is full, they immediately pass urine. Okay, so that is beside the point. But what happened? See, this muscle, I said, is arranged in such a way that the pressures don't, from say 150 to 350 or 400 ml doesn't change much. But when will this be affected? So you said inflammation. So if there is any infection and inflammation, what happens to the muscles or bladder wall? It becomes thickened. So when it's thick, is it as elastic as earlier? Obviously it won't be less, it will be less elastic. So then the pressures will increase even before it reaches 350-400 ml. So when it reaches about 200 ml itself, you will have the desire to urge to pass urine. Okay, so then you will have frequency. Okay, and the night he might suppress a little bit, but then still if pressure is too much, you still wake up and go and pass urine. Okay, so then any of these infections, and what about stones? Will they cause irritative voiding symptoms? They can also cause infection, and also they will cause irritation. So because you have a stone, you feel that something is already there in the bladder, and you try and empty the bladder to see if that goes off. Okay. Then if the capacity of the bladder is small, say you have a TB of the bladder or malignancy or something which reduces the capacity, then also you will have increased frequency. Okay, so these are all called irritative voiding symptoms. What about urgency? Why does urgency occur? What happens with urgency? Why do you get urgency? Not incomplete voiding. See, when normally, I said the pressure doesn't change too much till it reaches about 350-400 ml. Then the pressure keeps increasing because then it can't stretch more than that. So that is the time when you really want to go and pass urine. But the same thing happens earlier because of any neurological dysfunction or a thickened wall or whatever the reason. If the pressure goes up, then it causes urgency. Then what is this incontinence? What does incontinence mean? You're not able to control urine as a leak. So what are the types of incontinence? Is written there. So what are the various types of incontinence? Okay, what is stress incontinence?
It's when anything that increases abdominal pressure causes.
So what all increases abdominal pressure? Okay, if we have cough.
Pregnancy.
Pregnancy, okay. Not, he can't become pregnant unfortunately. Then, any other causes?
Obesity.
Obesity. Obesity doesn't really cause incontinence because of pressure. Okay, anything which increases the abdominal pressure. So that can cause stress incontinence.
So how do you make out what are the symptoms of stress incontinence? So what question will you ask if somebody is incontinent?
When they experience that incontinence, does it follow any stress?
See, we find out what activities cause.
When they are laughing, coughing, or anything which is straining, urine will be incontinent. And when is it more? When the bladder is empty or when the bladder is full? When do you think it will be more? So when it is full, there is more chance of incontinence than when it's empty. Then what about urge incontinence? So usually this occurs with neurovesical dysfunction. So normally when, as I said, there is a sphincter which prevents the leak of urine. So when the sphincter is contracted, so when you want to, even when the bladder is full and the pressure is increasing, you don't pass urine. Even if you have urgency, if the class is not finished, you still stay on. Why is that? Because the sphincter contracts tightly. And the ureter doesn't, even though the bladder muscles try and contract, it doesn't allow them to. So when you in the toilet, when everything is okay, then the sphincter relaxes and then you pass urine. So generally what happens is that the bladder does not actively contract when the sphincter is closed. But what will happen if bladder contracts when the sphincter is closed? That sometimes happens with neurological disorders. The nerve is affected. 1/3 of the spinal cord nerves go to the bladder. If they are affected, sometimes when the sphincter is tight, bladder will try and contract. This is called uninhibited contractions. So these unstable contractions is what will cause, they can cause this urge incontinence. So once it contracts, even if the bladder is not full, you'll have a big urgency to pass urine. And sometimes it may happen so much, the pressure will increase so much that even before you go to the toilet, a little bit urine will come out. Okay. And what is mixed incontinence? Obviously, it can have both urge incontinence and so long-standing obstruction. It can develop these uninhibited contractions also. And what is this thing called overflow incontinence? So where does it comes through the mouth? So where does the overflow incontinence come from?
Complete void.
So if you're not able to void at all, if the bladder is full, then it can stretch to a little bit. Maybe sometimes people, when they have obstruction, they go up to the umbilicus. But it can't keep on going like this, like a balloon. So at one point, when new urine comes, it'll keep leaking, it'll overcome the 60 centimeters, however hard the sphincter tries, it'll overcome. So that is called overflow incontinence. Right. So what are the symptoms? So we found obstructive voiding symptoms and then irritative voiding symptoms. Okay, so now we need to do a test to actually find out the various things, because these are all assumptions. So unless we really know the thing, then only we can, what actual pressures are, what is happening inside the bladder, then only we can actually intelligently assess what is happening and give treatment. So that's why we do a test called CMG. What does CMG stand for? I told you at the beginning. Does anyone remember? Cystometrogram, CMG. So what does cysto mean? In Latin is bladder. Metro is not metro train. It's pressure. So gram is a study. So it basically in common English is the bladder pressure studies. So how will you study the bladder pressures? Okay, so what do you see here? Okay, these are special machines which are available for doing a cystometrogram. So what they do is they study the pressure inside the bladder. But what is the actual pressure inside the bladder is a combination of the detrusor pressure, which the bladder muscle contract and produce, and the abdominal pressure, because bladder is inside the abdomen. So if you cough, strain the abdomen, that pressure gets added on to the bladder pressure. Okay, so then what do you do? How do you study the actual detrusor pressure? Because we are interested only in detrusor pressure. So to get the actual detrusor pressure, what should you do? So you have to get the total pressure, subtract the abdominal pressure. So how will you measure the abdominal pressure? You do an operation and put a sensor inside the abdomen, or is there any other simpler way of doing it?
Gain access through the event.
So it's simple. So you have a transducer at the tip, you put a catheter, and it goes into the bladder. Okay, so that is simple. So how do you measure the pressure inside the abdomen?
You get the pressure when the detrusor muscles are not functioning. I think that will be when there is minimum urine.
See, it's difficult to get there. Whatever, even if we have put a sensor in the muscle, the actual pressure which transducer measures is a combination of both abdomen. And as he said, you have to find a way of subtracting the abdominal pressure. So to subtract the abdominal pressure from the total pressure, you need to find out the abdominal pressure. So if you do an operation to put a transducer into this thing for a test, people won't agree. You can't take, for doing bladder pressure studies, you can't take a person to the operation theatre. And operation theatre, again, what will happen is you'll have to give anesthesia to put the probe inside the abdomen, so it doesn't work. So how do you do it? So is there any other place where you can put the transducer which will give you the abdominal pressure? Is there any other natural opening?
Maybe through the rectum.
Yeah, so you put a rectal probe. So the pressure inside the rectum reflects the abdominal pressure. And the pressure inside the bladder measures the total pressure. The detrusor pressure plus the abdominal pressure is the total. Then you have a computer which subtracts and gives the fact. So when a machine does all these things, do you think it's going to be cheap or expensive? It's very, very expensive, because when we were training, the first machine we got was 27 lakhs, which will be how much? 10 to 20,000, 10 to $15,000. Now the Chinese have made a cheaper machine, but that is also not all that cheap. But then that is an important test to know how to treat the urinary tract symptom. So what do you do? Especially if you're in a rural area, you don't have that much money to buy this other equipment. So what what we do is we put an infant feeding tube into the bladder. Okay. And then what are the other ways of, one way of measuring the pressure is using a pressure transducer, which are machines which calculate the pressure. So any other way of measuring the pressure? You may have studied in school. How can you measure pressures?
Use machines.
You don't have machine here. So how do you do it? Manometer. So what you do is you put a infant feeding tube, so it has an opening there. Then the tube you put it along a tape measure. Right? So then you see the water level. So that will act as a manometer. Okay, so then you can actually, then the problem is, where do you have a zero? So where do you set up the zero? You need to have a landmark. So what is the landmark you use for zero pressure? Because some patients are so broad, some are so thin. So the height of the bladder will vary. So is there any variable thing which is constant with each person? So, okay, you imagine, look, tell me the anatomy of the bladder. Which is the easily identifiable structure through which is always close? Huh? Yeah, the pubic symphysis. Okay, so you palpate the pubic symphysis and set the zero there. Okay, so then you have the pressure. And this is a low cost method of measuring the thing, because you have a fluid level, and as the pressure goes up, the fluid level also will keep going up. And the normal pressure is 60 centimeters, so you want to have till at least 100 centimeters or whatever is a long tube, so that you can make the pressure. But then what happened to it's a total pressure. It's not only the detrusor pressure. So what do you do? Okay, go home, it's a homework, and tomorrow you come and tell me how you do it. Okay, but for this test we don't need that. You need to be aware. So when you're actually calculating the thing, can you find out when the patient is training? How?
When you open the abdomen to be.
Yeah, so you can keep a hand on the abdomen, you know, when he's contracting the muscles, when he's coughing. So the problem with the low cost method is that somebody has to be present to find out and ignore those contractions, because those pressures will show false reading. So you look at only when the abdomen is soft and the patient is not contracting. Okay. So then you can, so how do you fill the bladder? No, normally it will take, how long it takes, say to 100 ml per hour means it takes 4 hours. So do you want to sit next to the patient for 4 hours to do the test? Ideally you should. But then since you don't have that much time, what we do is we put another infant feeding tube and fill the bladder. So you can fill the bladder, and every 50 ml when it goes in, you measure the pressure. So that's how you record the thing. This is a low cost method of doing the cystometrogram. Okay, so that will tell us what exactly is happening and why is the symptoms occurring. So you learnt about lower urinary tract symptoms and a low cost method of doing a bladder pressure studies. But then what about this low cost method? Do you need any machines? You don't need any machines. You need only your brain. And then you need, all you need is 2 infant feeding tubes, 2 IV tubings, 1 tape measure and 1 IV stand, which are all very easily available. But if you are intelligent, you can extract exactly the same information that you get with the hi-fi machines. And you can do the same evaluation of the symptoms and then offer the proper treatment. For example, if as I said, the size of the prostate doesn't really matter. It's whether it's causing obstruction or not only is what matters. Sometimes the prostate can be very small, 40 grams, 50 grams, but can cause significant obstruction because the obstruction is due to two factors. One is because of the prostate gland, which actually increases in size, and the stromal muscles which are there. So the muscles contract tight, it can cause obstruction. So even if the prostate is small, if the voiding pressures are more than 100 centimeters, 110 centimeters, you need to do surgery to release the pressure. On the other hand, sometimes you may have a huge gland, 100 grams gland, but the maximum voiding pressure is only 60 centimeters of water. Then even if you go ahead and do the operation and remove the prostate, still there won't be any change. It won't benefit the patient. And that's the importance of doing a urodynamic study to find out whether there is significant obstruction or not. And sometimes if that is due to other causes, neurovesical dysfunction and so on, actually doing a prostate surgery may be harmful. It may lead to incontinence rather than benefit the patient. So you get a lot of useful information with a low cost test. But then it's a little different than machine because you just don't connect everything to the machine and let the machine do all the work. You have to stay with the patient, find out what is happening and intelligently interpret. So if you're able to do that, then maybe later on we'll show you what are the various other ways in which you can do or practice low cost urology which is relevant to rural areas.
30 minutes on this.
See, normally you should not be, most of the people, when they pass urine, empty the bladder completely. There will not be any urine left over. But up to 30 ml is acceptable. Because even if you're a normal person, sometimes you're in a hurry to pass urine and catch a bus. Or some bus is leaving in another 5 minutes, you want to go to the toilet before going to the bus. So you may not empty completely. So that time you might leave 20-30 ml behind, which is okay. And even if 30 ml is there, the doubling time is such that it's not going to cause any significant infection. But if it's more than 30 ml, then it has chances of causing significant infection is higher. So that is why. But then that should be coupled with the urodynamic test to see if the pressures are high. So if the pressures are high, if there is significant residue, then you tell them that okay, surgery is important, you do it as quickly as possible. If the pressure is say between 60 to 90, then you can try the various medical methods for treating. So that is why it's important to do the test and correctly interpret the results of the test.
Thank you so much. We are the final medical students of Kabale University School of Medicine, but we didn't get to know who you are. Thank you.
Your introduction.
You can introduce yourself to us. We'd like to know you.
Need to know about me? Okay. I would like you to subscribe to the channel and okay, I'm basically a urologist. So I trained in a place called Christian Medical College in Vellore, which is one of the premier medical colleges in Asia. In fact, in CMC Vellore, urology was the first to do renal transplant in Asia. CMC was the first to do the cardiac surgeries in Asia. So it's one of those premier institutes where we have, it's the famous medical college in Vellore. But then after finishing studies, I actually worked with a mission organization called Friends Missionary Prayer Band. So they worked in one area in Gujarat with 300,000 population in one tribal area. There were no doctors, not a single doctor. So I started training the missionaries who go there how to treat patients, because there are no doctors, they can't go anywhere. So when they fall sick, earlier they were going to magicians who used to brand them and treat various ways of treating which doesn't work. So then we taught the missionaries how to treat medicine. So that's why I was interested in working in rural areas. So then I worked in various mission hospitals, and now I go around teaching doctors in rural areas how to treat patients intelligently in rural areas. So like now we have the next time, probably tomorrow or later, we'll show you, we have a low-cost cystoscope which costs about $1,000. We can just connect it to the laptop and do the same thing, which where instead of $10,000 investment. And the same things, whatever you do with the conventional cystoscope is possible with the low-cost cystoscope. Same thing with laparoscopy surgery. Probably will soon, you'll also be starting gaseous laparoscopy surgeries, which makes the laparoscopy surgery also possible in rural areas. So most of the things, again, you go back to the channel, when you have time, you'll read. Okay. Thank you.